Welcome, boys and girls. Costin here with a discussion about Alith Anar in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Out of the High Elven campaigns, from a practical standpoint, Alith Anar might just actually be the most powerful, at least in terms of an early game situation. Someone like Alariel, someone like Tyrion, Elfarion may have longer term potential, but Alith Anar has that kind of early game potential that is very difficult to match, at least in certain ways. There's advantages and disadvantages in his approach. But let's take into consideration what his campaign has on offer. The video that I'm recording over here is legendary normal, just worth pointing out. So, first off, he has a global recruitment duration of -1 turn, minimum 1 turn. This also is something that stacks if you were to confederate Tyrion and get his own special skill line that also reduces this and gives you global recruitment capacity. This is a fairly significant benefit because it means a lot of units that may take multiple turns, if you're recruiting them globally, which is certainly something High Elves can do because Tyrion, can be recruited faster, can be recruited on the fly, and if you were to play that game, it would give you an enormous level of power. But on top of that, something that's not necessarily appreciated is you have the Shadow Realm army stance, and you also have the stock stance for not just Alith Anar's army, but for every army. So he's really a Skaven Legendary Lord for the High Elves. So stock is an ambush stance that allows you to attack an army in a field battle, and you have a chance of ambushing them. A lower chance, but there's ways of increasing that. Then, the underway stance gives you, or the tunneling stance gives you a significant amount of campaign mobility that other campaigns are lacking. In fact, out of the Legendary Lords in this area, Tarax has it, Grumbrindle has it, but not really that many people. Like, just the ambush benefit combined with tunneling stance is something in short supply in the game. And this is a pretty big advantage for Alith Anar combined with his recruitment benefit. Then you get extra campaign movement range, 10%, pretty substantial benefit in its own right, and you get the special invocation as well in Alith Anar's campaign here that summons a unique hero capable of assassinating without fail. And that's important because one of Alith Anar's unique campaign mechanics is those assassination missions. So the way this works is that every 20 turns you get a set of free characters that you are ordered to assassinate for various benefits. These benefits are random, the characters are random from the very beginning of a campaign. If there was anything I would change, it would be that. But you consider things like -50% recruitment cost for Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers, influence, money. You're always going to get influence, you're always going to get money, but you're also going to get other things like fear when fighting against Dark Elves, for instance. I believe there's also a growth benefit, though that's a bit more tricky to get. But in effect, you're playing a campaign that is by a very different set of rules compared to everyone else. And the reason, by the way, that I force march them over here to the Black Forest is because one of the initial missions is right here, Druki Slayer, there is never peace, and Sinostra starts at war with that faction. That's one of the annoyances of this campaign, that kind of randomization from the beginning. Also, if anyone does eliminate these targets and it's not you, you'll have to wait for the 20 turn timer, but if you are the one eliminating them, then you don't. And that's a pretty big deal, because it means, realistically, that, yeah, you can just, play it like this, right? You allow Sinostra to take it over, you wait, and that counts as you winning that battle. So that's one of the reasons I moved there. It can be annoying, sometimes frustrating. You kind of want a set of objectives like this because it gives you that kind of fairly substantial advantage in your campaign. But there's more as well, because of course there is more in this particular campaign situation. See, Alith Anar has a unique unit and a unique recruitment structure in his campaign. He gets this camp. Now, this camp allows you to recruit Shadow Warriors, which are a tier 3 unit usually, so you have the ability of recruiting these units from the very beginning. you have a higher ambush success chance in a province with this building, you have a better ambush defense chance, and you get the tier 3 unit from the very beginning of the game. Then you also get a unique unit. Now, Shadow Warriors are a DLC unit, Queen and the Crone specifically. So, if you own that DLC, that's great. If you don't own it, what you're given are Shadow Walkers. Now, Shadow Walkers are basically Shadow Warriors, but just better. They have poison attacks, though they do take 2 turns to recruit. This is where Alith Anar and Tyrion together would actually work very well, because Tyrion would also reduce that recruitment duration as well. Still, you do get these sneaky ambushing skirmishing units in a campaign, quite a few of them. And while you wouldn't want to go against, say, Nakari with these units, they are fairly strong against the vast majority of factions. That is a pretty big deal, especially when you combine it with other things that Alith Anar has. So for instance, he gets a minus 50% upkeep for Shadow Walkers and Shadow Warrior units. He gets a 25% ambush success chance for his army, which means that even in stock stats, you're still having a good amount of ambush success chance. He starts with a Mage of Shadows. Not the best necessarily in quite a few ways, because she doesn't necessarily have the best trait for it, and maybe those starting mages should have a better trait. But it's still a pretty powerful benefit that he does have access to from the beginning of his campaign. So lots of money, lots of influence, and it doesn't stop there either. So a few turns into this campaign, we got this assassin hero moving over here. What's interesting is that if you confederate Alith Anar, he might have a bunch of these assassin heroes just lying around. You lose them if you're playing him permanently once they do assassinate someone. But if you confederate them, you might just have a bunch of them sticking around, just being able to murder everyone in their path. Yes, High Elves are fairly broken. That's one of the reasons they need an update. He does have 2 quest objectives. One's a quest battle, not really a hard one. The other one is to take the Shrine of Cain. Again, not really a difficult thing. This is just a vanilla campaign legendary normal. Pretty easy, all things considered, in a situation. But there's more. A lot more in point of fact over here, because you do get a ton of money, you do get a ton of recruitment options, you do get a ton of flexibility. It might seem natural that what you want to do is wipe out Karen Carr, but the game doesn't actually force you to do so. See, you look at the campaign objectives. I ain't seeing a Karen Carr objective over here to wipe them out. You need to control Nagaryth, sure, so you do need to go back to Wolf 1 to an extent, but you can just leave them alive. Sell them shit. Like, wipe them out, sack their settlement, get a peace agreement, get 4k from the peace agreement if you're playing on Legendary, then sell them back Slaver Point over here, and you maybe even get a non-aggression pact with them, if you want to, right? Peace agreement will give you some time anyway. That is a fairly substantial benefit. The amount of money you get in this campaign, as early as you can get it, is pretty crazy. And when you stack that up with the assassination missions, it becomes even crazier. But wait, there's more, even still. Like, beyond just the fact that, you get a bunch of recruitment benefits, cost reductions, money, influence. But here's one of the things about High Elves. Something I've talked about in previous videos is that High Elves are fairly broken because of administrator trait, construction time, and construction cost. So they can basically get instant construction and free construction. Now, normally, the way you do this in a High Elven campaign is you either spend a long campaign getting a bunch of these Archmages, and you can, it's not really that difficult, to get a bunch of them, showing up with the trait over here that may not necessarily have the School of Magic you want, but they will usually have the trait. Like, there's always going to be some that will have the trait. But it's just better to play an Elfarian campaign, save a bunch of these, or play a bunch of Elfarian campaigns, save up a bunch of these as level 1. But in Alith Anar's campaign, because he gets influence through every single one of these assassination missions, and because he can do those assassinations fairly quickly if things align, then that means he can get whatever heroes and lords with whatever traits you want in a campaign at a reasonable pace. You can still use the load save character system, but think of a multiplayer scenario where load save character is disabled for good reasons because people can abuse that very easily. Well, one of the things to be said, you either have a load save character system, which means you have a lot of influence at your disposal in a campaign. So that means you can manipulate diplomacy if you want to, right? You can make factions hate each other. You can make factions like each other. You can make it a bit easier with regards to confederation. Sure, right? Like, for instance, if I want Hellebrand to really hate Malekith, I just don't have division with Malekith. But if I want that, then I want to spark a war between her and Valkia, I can do so through the manipulation of diplomacy. Influence is just very slow to gain early on in a campaign, but the power is there. Usually the problem is that by the time you do get a bunch of influence and are able to get it consistently, you kind of don't care because you're that powerful. But having that kind of power early on makes Alith Anar's situation that much better. But wait, there's even more. Because it's not just one part of the package, it's the entire freaking vault, it's the entire bank that we've got here. You get Revenant. You reduce leadership in a region. You cause fear. You get speed, melee attack, ammunition for Shadow Warriors. You get income from sacking and looting settlements. Income post-battle loot. You get missile strength and weapon strength when fighting Dark Elves. You get an ambush success chance on top of Ravenlord. So you get a plus 40% ambush success chance. You get Renegade. Renegade is broken. It's pure insanity. You lose -8 diplomatic relations with High Elves. You don't care. Seriously, it could be triple this and you still wouldn't care. Because you have such a control of relationships as High Elves that it's relevant. Anything above -40 aversion is something you can manage in a campaign pretty well. And you get 12% missile strength for all your armies faction-wide. Your stock stance armies, your underway armies, your armies with Shadow Warriors, the Shadow Walkers, and a significant level of force. But then there is even more, because it is that crazy. You get 4 control in all provinces faction-wide, and you get 15% replenishment campaign movement range for Alith Anar's army. So, in conclusion, that control benefit, by the way, is a significant economic benefit and a growth benefit. High Elf economy is just stronger the more control they have over a province. It's not just because of the inherent benefits of having a high level of control, though that does play a role in it. It's also really going to boil down to the fact that the way your economy works favors a high level of control, right? So the economic structures, the control details, all that kind of stuff, they all favor that high level of control, like construction costs, recruitment costs, income from buildings, local recruitment capacity. It is all favoring it. And high elves have a pretty good level of control for the structure, but what if you don't need the structure? Anyway. So, Alith Anar, he's not just a Skaven legendary lord. He's got a bit of everything sprinkled in. That's why I call this campaign wacky. Because you've got a bit of Skaven, you've got a bit of Wood Elf, you've got a bit of Khorne in all of it. And if that's an unholy combination to you, it's because it is an unholy combination. You have a legendary lord that may have a vulnerable campaign in terms of starting position, but you have an objective-based system, similar to Khorne, specifically Arbol, or Oxyatl. You get significant rewards, similar to Khorne and Oxyatl. You can move around the campaign map, similar to a Skaven. You can ambush as well as any Skaven. And then on top of that, you're far more powerful than a Skaven. Because, consider this. Skaven have a really good elite army, but they are really bad in terms of their baseline units. High Elves have some of the best baseline units in the game, archers and spearmen. But then you combine that with the focus of Alith Anar on Shadow Warriors, Shadow Walkers, and then you consider all the money you're going to get, which means you can invest in growth, you can invest in construction, you don't have the dynamics of other campaigns. And you kind of start realizing that he's got the best of many worlds. If there is a downside, and it does exist, the randomization of objectives can be pretty annoying. And on top of that, climate is severely limited. It's a one-off campaign from a climate perspective. You can't even control a wolf one properly, which does hurt. Well, not really, because by the time you do start controlling wolf one, your economy is so freaking strong, you don't really care anymore. But you understand the limitations. It's a campaign aimed at one guy, Malekith, and that's it. But I'm going to be honest, this is the one campaign I would genuinely ban in multiplayer for a lot of reasons of the High Elves. I mean, High Elves already are pretty crazy, if you consider a lot of things. But this goes over the top. Alariel is pretty crazy, sure, but it does take work and its vulnerability. The vulnerabilities, like Alith Anar doesn't need to hold his starting province. You want to abandon that and go to Nagarev and make that an impregnable fortress? You can do so, and very few people are going to be able to kick you out of it. So that's all I had to say. Christine signing out, and stay tuned for more. And just gonna point out, this is the reason we need a High Elf rework. It's not just like fixing pacing issues, fixing problems, etc. It's also to remove some of this wacky stuff or rebalance it, hopefully. Because there's a lot of broken elements when combined with the High Elves that just create this kind of dynamic. Christine signing out.